Welcome to If These Pages Could Talk. Today we are chatting about time travel romance, dual timelines, some of the research that goes into that, and a little bit on book marketing. But first, I'm your host, Kiersten Marcil, author and adventurer into history. I'm here with my co-host,
Sevannah, Storm romance author.
And we're here with another author-editor duo for you. So let's turn to our editor first to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jodi Christensen. I used to edit for Champagne Books. I just do mostly freelance edits now, and I edit dark speculative fiction mostly. And I'm an author.
I'm so excited to have you back, Jodi.
Thank you.
And as our guest author, we have Vera. So please, Vera, introduce yourself.
I'm Vera Bell, the author of Through the Veneer of Time, which is an Irish time travel romantic suspense. It's a mouthful. Those are all my genres. I live in Georgia with my husband, who is my high school sweetheart, and many years.
Cliche.
And the best kind.
And our two teenagers, a boy and a girl, and a little rescue dog, a mini schnoodle named Fiona, who will probably bark at some point today.
It's all good. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you back. I thought to start us off, we would do an icebreaker, just a nice basic this or that. So to our group, which would you rather? Would you rather go to the movies or read a book?
Read a book, hands down. There's nothing like it.
Most of the time, read a book, but every once in a while, there's a movie I really want to see. So.
You need that big screen experience.
Right.
Yeah, we have
Seb?
date night this Tuesday, and we were going to go watch a movie, but the movie's not showing that we want to see, so it's going to be gaming night.
Oh,
Yeah, so not book
Okay.
night.
not book
No
night.
books. No books.
Oh, we just oh no, I can't remember what the occasion was. Got hers chairs in our library, so now we can do a date night where we just sit and read together in our library, and it's just the best. Just the best. Okay, so this or that. Would you rather a European vacation or a tropical beach resort vacation?
European.
Yeah, European vacation, 100%. We lived in Florida until we moved to Georgia, South Florida.
Oh,
For
wow.
years. I've had enough tropical vacations.
I would also like the European vacation, so we should all just go.
We should all go.
Yeah.
So much more to see, to do. I mean, how many pina coladas can you drink before you've had enough?
See, yeah, exactly. And the summer gets old too.
And as you can see, I'm very pale, so the sun has a laser beam as soon as I expose anything to it. So yeah, I don't want to be a tortilla or crisp anything. So yeah, European, 100%.
Whereabouts would you go though in Europe?
I would do Rome, just to see all
yeah.
the museums and the art museums, because I studied art and architecture for 7 years, so it would be phenomenal. And I'd love to go to Iceland. I don't know if that's part of Europe. It is part of Europe. Yeah, and I've got friends in Germany and friends in Belgium and friends in Netherlands, so I would stop and visit them all.
How about you, Vera?
Yeah, who can guess?
Is there like a particular place in Ireland that you would want to spend
Yeah, that's more narrow. Yeah, anywhere. There we go. Northern Ireland, but anywhere in Ireland. Yeah, I love it.
Okay.
I want to do one of the castle tours where you go see the castles in different countries, and I do have family in Germany, so I would want to go see my family.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. I did research once, and there's a castle in Northern Ireland, right on a cliff. So you can meet Vera there.
Yeah. There you go.
I'll be there just hanging out.
Sounds good to me.
They turned it into a hotel, so.
Oh,
Oh,
fun.
that would be amazing.
That would be.
Yeah.
We'll
We
host
did
the
our,
Champagne Book Group conference there.
I love it. I love it.
Romcon. I will pitch it to Cassie. Where would you
That
go?
would be a true writer's retreat. That would be amazing. Where would I go? I think I really want to go back to Inverness. We stayed at Knockholme Manor, and it was just, it was a quick drive to Loch Ness, and it was so beautiful, and the manor was lovely, and we just really loved the son owned it, and so he grew up in the manor when it was a family home, and just I would love to see him again. He still runs it, I guess, so like 25 years later. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so would you rather go to a Ren fair or a music festival?
Ren Fair.
Yeah, Renaissance.
Same. It's like romance authors all have things in common here.
Okay, well then here's our last one, and it's a hard one then. If you could only read one genre for the rest of your life, would it be romance or fantasy?
Romance. Duh.
For me, it would be
Duh.
fantasy, just because but fantasy with elements of romance or some sort of romantic subplot, just because fantasy, there's so many directions you can go. It's such an endless well.
Mhm.
Think about it, one genre your whole life. So it would be fantasy for me because there's just more there, but it has to have romance, otherwise I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But then
That's
you
a
could
good-
have romance with fantasy elements.
That's right.
Yeah, and then if you get bored of romance fantasy, you can do romance paranormal. See, that's what I was thinking, because sometimes I get bored of romance fantasy and I'd like a bit of a
Something else.
Different.
yeah.
Subgenre.
Yeah.
And I would read all the time travel romances I could find. And because I really like historical, but then it's kind of fun to see all the different places that authors will take you, and how they get there. I think that's pretty interesting too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to end up being romance for me too. And I need that happy ending. So, and I don't know, there's so many fantasy, like you said, but I don't like the hardcore fantasy. So yeah. Yeah.
And
Not
we
a
can
high fantasy.
we can handle hardcore romance.
Yeah. No. I am not the ghost pepper range that we keep talking about. Keep me down near, what was it? The baby caballera? That's probably even too spicy for me. I think before we jump in with Vera's book, Jodi, and I meant to give you a heads up on this, and I'm sorry. You have a great list of questions for Vera. And your last question, I was hoping you could throw at her, because it really deals with where her book comes from. And I thought it was a great question to start us off.
Oh, okay, sure.
On the spot.
On the spot. So past life regression plays a large role in the story, and you did say that you've experienced that before one time. So I'm wondering, was your past life regression intentional, or was it like spontaneous, unexpected? And how did that experience shape your story for you?
It's a great question to start with. It's kind of the core of my novel. Yeah, so I've been preoccupied with, the lack of a better word, with past lives my whole life. Even when I was little, I just kind of wondered, I don't know how to put it into proper words, because when you're little, when you're a child, you don't process the world the same way as you do when you're an adult. But I kind of wondered about that, and I always I don't know how to even explain it. I just kind of felt like I wasn't home. That's the best way. I just felt like I wasn't, and who knows why. By the way, a disclaimer: I don't necessarily have like a strong set of beliefs when it comes to past life. I don't know, right? I'm not one of those people who's like, oh yes, there are past lives. We all had past. I don't know. I have no idea, but I do have certain feelings, and I do have certain things, that have happened to me. So a lot of people, so past life regression is actually used mostly as a form of therapy, where if someone has some sort of a phobia, let's say, or I don't know, something that they're dealing with that's really difficult for them. They're struggling with it. That's just another form of therapy. This isn't anything that's like FDA approved, or it's just one of those practices that some people believe in, some people don't, whatever, right? But some people use it that way, and they're trying, and the idea kind of behind it is that you go into it's a form of hypnosis, and it's sometimes done through a practitioner, someone who does that for a living, or it could be done in other ways. I did it in a completely different way, which I'll go into in a second. But basically, you go through this session, and the idea is to tap into your past life to find out what is it that is holding you back, maybe in this life, or what is it that is, like maybe you had some sort of a trauma or something you're dealing with. Maybe you can just resolve it through figuring out, oh, well, that makes sense. I can move past it now. It happened to me in my past life, or something like that. For me, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Whole table here. My dog just freaked out. So for me, it was more of I was curious. I didn't go see anyone. I did a YouTube video. There are lots of YouTube videos, and I will say that, and I know there's a lot of skepticism about it, and I was very skeptical myself, but I will say that it was an experience like no other. It was not daydreaming. It was not, obviously I'm a creative person, I'm a writer. It was not me trying to kind of write a story and tap into that story in my head. It was nothing like that. It wasn't anything that I expected. It was, the best way that I could describe it is it was so visceral. It was so vivid. I was in the moment, like I am now. I could feel the temperature, I could feel the textures, the minute details that you don't typically experience in your dreams. It was real, is all I can say. And the kicker was that it wasn't me. Not me at all, like not in any way. And that was extremely it was amazing. And I just really like wanted to continue, but the video ended. The YouTube video ended, and the session ended, and I was like, "What? Wait a minute! Wait, what?" And then I was, I tried to go back, and I can never go back now, because all I want to do is go back to that moment. But the kind of the requirement for it to work is that you have to have a completely open mind and not sort of navigate yourself to any particular scenario. And I don't help it. I want to go back. And so I can't go back. I can't do it anymore. So this is a very long answer to this question. But when I did it, after I did it, I started to sort of continue to imagine what would happen from there on. And so I kind of wrote the continuation in my head. At some point, it became so vast that I realized that I was writing a novel. And actually now it's a trilogy, and it's got 3 prequels, so it's like a whole, it's taken on a life of its own. But that's kind of a very long-winded answer to how past life regression played part in
That's a great answer. So you didn't know when you yes, wow, yeah, so you didn't know that this was going to be a series when you started?
I always, not in the beginning, but once I kind of got into it more from, I put my writer's hat on, I did know that it was going to be a series. It was going to be a trilogy. I always knew that. I did not know I was going to have prequels, but I have to have them now. So I'm writing them now. So it's a whole like big thing. Yeah.
Exciting. That's so great. You and I have a similar start. I mean, I've never done past life regression. I would love to try it sometime. My book came out of a dream, where Jodi knows this, where the second chapter was a dream. And I woke up just as Jodi, when Captain Jonathan knocks Savvy to the ground, and that's where I woke up, and the sword, hits the ground, and I'm like, but what happens next? So like you, Vera, I just kind of left it chuck in my head. That's so cool.
Interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Chapter of my novel is pretty much I think it's chapter 4, is it? I think it's 4. Anyway, it's almost an exact account of my past life regression.
Of course,
Yeah.
now we all need to go look at chapter 4.
I know, right? Yeah.
Like I remember, I know your story because I edited it, but I don't remember which was chapter 4.
Sienna's first real, foray into it, basically.
Okay.
I love that you can name the chapter, because my dad is still reading my book, and I'll say, oh, he's like, yeah, I was reading your book last night. Well, where'd you leave off? Oh, chapter such as. Like, Dad, I don't know the numbers. They
No,
changed.
I don't either. It's just that chapter is so significant for me personally. But yeah, no, I don't either. Dad is reading your book. Oh my goodness.
Well, which is crazy because he's not into it at all. So it's like kind of a chore for him. I'm like, you don't have to read it. You're not my audience. And he's like, no. Like, there's 5 books, right? Okay, so why don't you tell us about your book?
All right. So the book is about a mural artist who stumbles upon past life regression while she's doing research for her mural commission at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. And she stumbles upon it. She doesn't really want to do it. She doesn't believe in it. But it just kind of takes her there, and she starts to have past life visions, and they're pretty thrilling and incredible, and she's just really into it, and she thinks that they're there because they're an inspiration, to provide her with inspiration for her mural. She actually has a creative block, but all of a sudden she breaks through the creative block and has this incredible idea and paints this mural. What she doesn't know is that they're not an inspiration. They're actually a harbinger of her terrifying ancient revenge vow, and she has to fulfill it in this life. The problem is she doesn't find out until it's a little bit almost too late, and so the question becomes, whether or not can she fulfill this vow, or will the past just repeat itself in kind of a chilling parallel.
Wow, that's great. How do you classify the genre of this book?
Oh my goodness, that was so hard. So when obviously the advice is, right, you need to write to the genre. I did not write to the genre. I always knew it was going to be a time travel. I always knew it was going to take place in Ireland in some way or form. But I didn't really think in terms of the genre. I thought in terms of the plot and the characters' motivations. That was really what I was writing about. And when I started thinking about the genre, it was actually my first kind of choice was women's fiction, because it's a hero's journey, truly. Even though it takes place over 2 lifetimes, Sienna, or my character, she has 2 names because one is the past life, one is the present. But my character starts, in the past and kind of as a certain kind of person, and ends in the present as a kind of a different person at the end. So I thought it was women's fiction. But then, I had a lot of feedback from beta readers and from different people, from Jodi, from all kinds of people. And really at the core of the story is romance, because it's about a couple ultimately and all their trials and tribulations where, they're together and they can't be together for various reasons. And then eventually they do have their happily ever after, or because it's the first book in a trilogy, it's more like happily for now, to be honest. But it really is at its core romance, but it's romance that has elements of suspense, mystery, fantasy, magical realism. So there's a lot in there. It's kind of a cross genre, really. Book. So, however, the bottom line that kind of we all arrived at is it's time travel romantic suspense, because that's kind of the genre that we think that that kind of reader would be drawn to this book. And turns out is drawn to this book. So it's
Yeah.
romantic suspense. Long
That's
answer
great.
again.
No, but that's good because, I saw that on your website. Your story has so much to offer that you can't just pigeonhole it into just a simple romance or even just time travel romance. There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
Well, and I remember one of the first questions that you had asked me when we first met was, to help figure out the genre. And I said, well, I need to read the whole story first. And then I remember thinking, this isn't just time travel romance. It is so much more. So that was something right from the start that we were like trying to decide and figure out. I do remember that.
Jodi, how did you get connected with Vera?
It actually came through from Cassie and a Kelly, I believe, and they just approached me and said that they had an author who needed an editor, and I currently had a spot in my editing schedule, and they said, this kind of seems right up your alley, and they asked if I would take a look at it, and so I agreed to do that, and as soon as I started reading, I was like, I have to finish this book. Like, I have to read it, I have to know what happens. And so I was on board. Probably I knew within the first few pages that I wanted to be her editor. So from there they just introduced us, and I agreed to be the editor for that book, and really glad I did. I loved it.
That's wonderful. What is it that jumped out at you?
I think for me, I'm a sucker for really good characters, and I just like the characters grab you right from the start, and it's so you're trying right from the beginning to start connecting the dots, I guess, because you meet both of the main characters within the first few chapters. So you're kind of trying to connect the dots and decide how they're related, but you don't know. But it's done in such a way that you have to know. So you keep going and you keep going. And I loved that. I loved not knowing everything right at the start. I loved that there was that element of what's going to be next, because sometimes, and not anybody in particular I know, but just books I've read, they can be predictable. They can follow a formula, and this book doesn't do that. This book doesn't follow the formula in a traditional way, and it keeps you guessing, and I wasn't sure, and I needed to know.
That's cool. So it paid off not to write to a genre there, Vera.
What was that?
I said it paid off to not write to a genre expectation.
I guess so.
Right?
Now, do you have a passage to read for us?
I do have a passage. I know it's supposed to be a minute, right? Or about a minute.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit longer. So it's this long.
Okay.
Feel free to stop me. I just kind of picked where I thought would make sense to start and end, but
Okay. Is there anything we need to know before you start?
oh yeah. Yes. So I will talk a little bit about this just to give a little context. So past lives, right? So we're going back to past lives. So I think everyone listening and all of you have probably experienced something like this, where you've met a person, right? And for the first time, and you just kind of have this visceral reaction to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really know why. Maybe you really like them. You just really click, right? And you just kind of feel like, wow, what a great person, like I feel like I've known them my whole life, and you haven't. Yeah. Or conversely, maybe you meet someone who you have a different kind of visceral reaction to. You really dislike them, and they haven't done anything to you, as far as you know, right? But you just really, really dislike them. And maybe they dislike you back too. I mean, who knows, right? I think we've all experienced that to some extent. And so this is what this passage is, kind of the context of this passage is. My heroine, Sienna, has met this individual. This is her second encounter with him. And she met him in a professional environment. So he shouldn't be threatening to her. In fact, he really, on the surface, things doesn't seem like someone who should be threatening. He's a good-looking man. He's kind of suave, and professional, occupies a great position. And yet she's terrified of him. She wants to run for her life, and she can't understand why, because he's saying some odd things, but not enough to really like terrify a person like that. And so obviously this goes back to the past life. She has met him, and under horrible circumstances, but she doesn't know it yet. But she does know it. So it's kind of this push and pull. So I'll read the passage to the best of my ability. All right. His words were a blast that made something inside me snap. Why couldn't I unlock my eyes from his? Unclench my knees despite an unbearable compulsion to run. I dug my fingernails into my sweaty palms to break the paralysis, drove the graphite shards into my flesh. Do you ever wonder what becomes of your characters? His vacuous smile didn't reach his eyes. What comes after your painstaking freeze frame? Your warrior. He pointed his chin at the mural. He's cocky, but he doesn't know what he's riding into. Yet hours from now, he could be lying in some field, stripped of his weapons, bleeding out into the ground as the vultures peck at his baby blues. His eyes widened, leaving his beautiful young widow all alone. His impossibly soft voice was a ringing blow in my ears. A tremor braced my throat. I drew a frantic breath against it. I'm sorry, I squeezed out. I'm not sure I follow. I'm sure you do, he chuckled. But don't look so stricken, Sienna Forte. It's only a painting, a fantasy, nothing more. Excuse me, I edged past him, cold all over. I rushed into the nearest restroom, tossed the broken graphite into the trash can, and locked myself in a stall. I hugged myself, tighter, gasped for air, not drawing any. My vision swam at the edges, flickering, fading. My heart thudded and breath came faster in my chest, choking me. Fragments of his words whirred around me, and I grasped my head to stop the awful cacophony, but it wouldn't stop. The image he drew cut like a knife, piercing through something soft and vulnerable inside me, something I'd buried deep down and wished to keep this way. But he'd driven it to the surface and laid it out in the open, raw and exposed.
Stunning. That was stunning.
Wow.
Thank you.
That was amazing. Oh
Thank
my gosh. Sorry, I'm a little teary-eyed actually. That was so good.
Oh my goodness.
That was so good. Oh, Jodi, you have to take over. Go ahead.
I remember that passage actually. I remember that. It was so good. I'm telling you, if you haven't read this book, it's one of those books that just grabs you. It doesn't let go. It doesn't like you have to keep reading. I mean, I remember when I received your full manuscript, I read the whole entire thing in like a day and a half. I think I stopped to sleep is what I did because I could not put it down.
Wow.
So yeah, that's so good.
That's a great
That's
compliment. All right. So Jodi, go ahead and why don't you ask the other questions?
I wanted to know, personality wise, which character would you say that is most like you, or do you have the most in common with?
So I think a lot of authors will say that, they're all the characters, right? And that's true for me as well. Except for the serial killer, I'm not. and the slash, he's counterpart, the brutal mercenary. That was a really hard, that's another conversation. It was really hard to write. I had to kind of step out of my head, but I am all of my characters to an extent. But if I had to choose one, I wish I could say I'm Sienna. That would be so cool because she's such a badass at the end. I'm not. I'm mean. I'm like all of us, right? I'm scared. I'm vulnerable. I'm, all those things. Like not really, really imperfect in every possible way. Yeah. If I had to choose one, it would have to be Neve.
Okay.
You had another question too there, Jodi.
Looking at my
The
well, she
first,
kind of already answered it because I had asked her, or I wanted to know, was the Irish setting like did that come before you started writing the book, or did you have the idea for a story and then decide to set it in Ireland? I guess I was curious, did the setting come before or after?
That's a great question. So I knew it was going to be in Ireland, so that was always the case for me. But what's interesting is, so I had not been to Ireland, right? And when I started writing, because I wrote this, I'm never gonna, by the way, write a novel for so long again, because I started writing this in some years, right? I didn't realize I was writing a novel, but when I did, it progressed from there on. But when I started writing it, so I had not been to Ireland at that time, but I've obviously been completely obsessed with it. I've seen a lot of videos and documentaries and read books and listened to music. I've always been kind of immersed into it. And then I wrote from those kind of secondhand experiences. But then I went to Ireland in 2019. I actually did a very immersive trip. Started in Dublin and went all around the island of Ireland. And just, it was like over 2 weeks long, and it was fantastic. I loved it. But what I found out, and it was shocking to me, was that I did not have to change a thing in my novel. I really got it right. But it did help to experience it firsthand, of course. And it was just as stunning, more stunning than I thought it would be.
oh, yeah, you have gorgeous photos that you put out on Instagram from your trip. Just, it looks like it must have been a great, great trip.
It was amazing. Yeah, I just enjoyed it so much. Although, it's weird. I will talk about this a little bit if I have time.
Yeah.
Because this is interesting. When you read about other people's kind of experiences like that, who think they had a past life, and then they go to the place where they think they had a past life, and you read about that, and they're like, oh my goodness, I felt like I was at home. I knew exactly where to go. I turned left, and then there was my old bed. It wasn't like that. I didn't know what to expect. And again, like I said, I don't know that I had a past life like that. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know what to expect. But what was really odd was that it was not what I expected at all. Actually, it's really kind of hard to describe the feelings that I had when I was there. But there's a Welsh word, and I'm going to completely butcher it, I think, but it's pronounced, I think, hiraeth or hiraeth, and it's not translatable into English, but it's something like a combination of homesickness, nostalgia, something that has been or may have been, or something that lives in your soul. And it's just kind of this, I guess, wistful kind of emotion that people have. So when I was in Ireland, I guess if I had to choose one word to describe my state, it was melancholy. I wasn't giddy. I wasn't like, oh, this is great, I'm home. It wasn't like that at all. I kind of felt melancholy and sad almost. And it felt like something, the best way I can describe it would be that it felt like a place that has changed beyond recognition. And it made me so sad. It was really weird. I did not expect that. So that was my experience. I don't know. I don't know where I went with this answer, by the way. I don't know. So apologize.
No, it's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have Jodi or Seb, have you had an experience similar to that where you've gone somewhere and had just a deep emotional reaction to the setting? Yeah.
I mean, I have, but it was honestly, I was so young at the time that all I remember is the feeling. I don't remember where I was.
Wow.
So I don't know. I was a child, and I remember we were somewhere, but both of my parents have passed. I don't have anybody that I can ask. So I
Yeah.
just remember we lived back east at the time, and it was somewhere back east. But I've always had, the eastern side of the country, specifically colonial towns and villages, and founding locations have been on my bucket list, and I have a really deep desire to go there. And I
Yeah.
know that when I was young, I lived in Boston, and we did travel a lot on the East Coast. So
Yeah.
I don't remember the place. I just remember the feeling. When I
Yeah.
say I was young, I was maybe between 3 and 5, like young.
Wow. And it
I just
stuck with
remember
you.
having that feeling of kind of longing for a certain place.
They
Yeah.
say that young children are more in tune with, if you believe in this set of beliefs, more in tune with their past life because they have just come out of it.
Yeah.
That's what they say anyway.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great that you got to go over there and see and experience, and how interesting. Okay. Now you had told me that there's a controversial Irish chieftain that was an inspiration to you. You want to tell us about him?
Absolutely, yes. So Shane O'Neill, also known as Sean O'Neill, that's, by the way, my son's name is Sean. Also, not because of Shane O'Neill, but yeah,
Just worked out.
love that name. Isn't it interesting? So anyway, and then the anglicized version is John. So he's also known as John the Proud, John the Proud. He was an Irish chieftain of the O'Neill dynasty, which was a powerful clan family, back, actually dating back to Niall of the Nine Hostages, which was the semi-historical figure. Those who know, or like Irish history, know about him, but he was kind of their predecessor, or ancestor, I should say, to the entire O'Neill clan, which they were. It's the Irish term is Ard Ri, and it basically means high king. So they were all high kings. It was a prominent family. So Shane O'Neill was his main the reason why he's controversial, right, is because the history is written by the victors. So it depends on which accounts you read. If you read the British accounts, you read things about him that are horrible. He was sexually depraved. He would drink himself senseless and bury himself in hot ash to cure the hangover. He had abducted the wife of a rival chieftain and chained her to his bed and did unspeakable things to her. This is the British side, and it's propaganda, because when you read the Irish side, he wasn't guilty of any of those things, actually. He was, he did have a lot of affairs, but that was kind of their way of life. And I might go into it later, but it was for the perpetuation of the size of the clan, because the bigger the clan, the more powerful the chieftain is. So it was to their advantage, really, to have a lot of children of both genders, because it doesn't matter, even if it's a girl, she would be married off to, another chieftain. So it was all good. So not to go too far into that, but the whole hot ash thing up to the neck, that was a medical treatment. That was kind of a natural, medicinal treatment for, kind of like a mineral bath that we would have now, something like that. The whole abduction story and chaining to the bed, that woman was married to another chieftain who was older. And apparently not very attractive, whereas Shane O'Neill was still young and handsome and powerful. And she actually eloped with him and they ended up, it's a love story that deserves its own book, and books have been written about it. They had this great love, and were, until his dying day, they were in love, and she was his partner, and was not abducted. So again, all of that was kind of, a British propaganda. But the main thing about Shane O'Neill, was that he was one of the most formidable opponents to the Tudor court, to Queen Elizabeth I. And he had done a lot of work to keep one unified Ireland, especially Ulster, the northern part of Ireland, under the control of the Irish. So he would not give that up. He did not want the English to come in and occupy his land. And he was kind of a rebel and presented a lot of obstacles for the Queen. So he was hated by her and eventually assassinated. So it's quite a story, but he was this larger than life personality. He was, kick-ass Irish hero, kind of like the ones you read about in the mythological accounts, the famous accounts, the cycle of Ulster and all those things. And so he was my perfect inspiration for my hero. He was exactly what I needed, this kind of larger than life warrior king.
That's great. Oh my gosh.
Trilogy.
Very cool. I just want to say a quick hi to Cassie because I saw that she joined us. So hi, Cassie.
Hi.
Hi, ladies. I'm having some problems with my microphone, but I've been wanting to join one of these, and I saw you guys were online when I checked emails. So,
oh, cool. Well, welcome.
Hi.
This is fun. I might put you on the spot then and ask you a question.
Never mind. I'm leaving.
No worries. So Vera, then to get back to,
I was like a bum today, so because I'm cleaning house, so I'm not going on camera.
That's fine.
Just so you know.
That's fine.
All look great.
Thank you. So Vera, how much research went into writing your book then?
So for me, research is not a chore. I love history. I'm a history nerd, and I love historical research. So I mean, I do it for fun. I know it's sad, isn't it? Maybe, I don't know.
Vera, that entire shelf is for my book. That's all history. I'm with you.
I like research too.
After my own heart. Yes, so I have about 24 pages worth of links of research, but I've also read a lot of books. So I read 3 books on just Shane O'Neill alone, and they were fiction. Really enjoyed them. And then I read some nonfiction books as well, historical accounts. There's one book in particular that was very useful, and it's called 16th Century Ireland, and it actually lists a lot of very interesting things in it. So yeah, I've done a lot of research, a ton, and I continue to do that as well because I love it. It just makes me really happy.
Well, you were a big help to me when we were chatting about women's issues, because Jodi, speaking of Outlander, was a little frustrated by one of the costume designers saying that, oh, women didn't deal with their periods, they just bled into their clothes. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. So I actually I call it the menstruation chapter, Jodi, in my second book, because I'm like, no, women dealt with it and no books deal with it. And we're going to talk about that. And Vera helped, you shared with me 16th century ways that women dealt with that. What was one of the fascinating things or something that really caught your attention when you were researching just maybe the lifestyle of 16th century?
Yeah, there's so much interesting stuff that's like, it's just mind-blowing. But the things that the one thing that really stood out for me was, well, so I kind of touched on that a little bit. So the whole clan situation. So their family structure was very different than our family, like what we know, right? So for a chieftain, it was advantageous to have a big clan. So the more kids they had, the better, because that made him stronger. So for example, so they had a wife and then they had concubines, because a woman can only have so many children. So for example, Shane O'Neill, it said that he had 75 kids total.
Oh my God.
Big clan, right?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. But the
Busy man.
busy man, real. But the interesting thing is that if a woman had relations with a chieftain, like any woman, it doesn't matter what woman, a kitchen maid, and she came to him and she got pregnant, and who knows if it's his or whatever, but she came to him and said, it's yours. He would be like, come on in. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, he would accept the child as his own because, again, it was advantageous for him to have many children. The other thing that I thought was absolutely fascinating was that Irish women, okay, think about this, the 16th century could file for divorce.
Wow.
Yes. Actually, either a man or a woman in a relationship, in marriage, could file for divorce, but particularly women had rights. They could file for divorce. I have a list of reasons, that grounds for divorce, which are just really interesting. I'll read it off. I just kind of did that. So the reasons to file for divorce were the following. So for the reasons of impotence, sterility. Okay, this one is horrible. Beating severely enough to leave a scar. So a husband could beat his wife, but if he left a scar, then she could file for divorce. Otherwise, no. So that's kind of, yeah, that's pretty crazy. Homosexuality was another reason that she could file for divorce. Failure to provide for her financially. Discussing her sexual performance in public or spreading rumors about her. So basically, attacking her character, defamation. She could file for divorce for that reason and receive it from the Brehon, which is the judge in that Irish law.
That seems like such an interesting, he can beat her all he wants to a point, but don't talk trash.
Don't talk,
right?
Exactly.
Don't talk trash.
Keep it
Wow.
behind doors, right? It's crazy, right? But yeah.
Interesting.
I found that very interesting. Another reason to file for divorce is if he, this one is kind of funny, if he had tricked her into marriage by using magic arts.
How would you prove that? So surely she had to be able to prove it.
That's kind of what I'm wondering. Like, okay, you just all of a sudden decide, you know what? We've been together for 10 years, but I think he tricked me into this marriage by magic arts. I don't know. It's kind of fun. Having abandoned her for another woman is another reason to file for divorce. However, she could also choose to stay in a marriage, even if he had abandoned her for another woman, and then he would have to provide financially for her. So
that could be a good deal.
Yeah, exactly. She would stay on, and and they wouldn't be together anymore in a normal sense, but he would have to pay for her.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, very different than what we know, right?
Yeah. Wow, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's really cool.
Sure.
Since we're running short on time, and if you've never joined us before, we always love when we have an author and editor on. We like to give them the chance to ask each other questions. I know Jodi's already asked some. Just because we spend so much time through email talking about the book, we don't always get the chance to chat with each other. So this is like our huge opportunity to do this. So Vera, I understand, has some questions for Jodi.
So yes, I guess my burning question is, what was the hardest part of the book to edit, and what was the easiest?
I don't know. I don't ever think that editing is necessarily easy because you're tuned into that part of your brain where you're looking at every detail and you're looking at every word. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say any of it's easy. Some of it's really, really enjoyable because you're editing sections that are fun or sections that are just really interesting to you. I would say, so overall, maybe the most satisfying, easiest parts were the parts that were a little more lighthearted, a little more, where we just are getting to know people, or they're having those romantic moments, things like that are a little more lighthearted. I think the hardest part of the most challenging, sorry, my voice is just kind of giving out here. The most challenging, I think, are the scenes that are really, really emotional and tense, because you have to get that pacing right and you have to get dialogue right. Everything has to be just right to make it work. And sometimes you have to know when to pull back and use less or add more. And that can be a challenge, because sometimes, the author has things that are really important to them that need to be there, and you want them to be there. So you're trying to figure out, how do these things still be there, but then work with what the pacing is and what the tension level needs to be. And I think that's always a challenge, but then it's so satisfying when you get it done and it's right. I think that's really satisfying. And I don't know, like, that's probably more satisfying than the romantic moments to edit, because when you do those challenging parts and you get it right, you're like, yes.
Nice.
Makes sense.
Jodi, did you have like I'm guessing you didn't know everything research wise that Vera came in knowing. How do you handle when you're dealing with an author like Vera or an author like me, where we've done all this research and now you're trying to double check us and edit us? And
Well, the first thing that I do if I'm not sure is I will look it up myself. Like, just a quick Google search sometimes can confirm something, or I will ask you guys, like, you know, where's your source? Where did you hear this? I don't remember if I actually had to ask either one of you that, because I think I was able to find the answers. But I feel like I've worked with authors before where you do have, what was your source? Where did you find this? Because this is what I found. And maybe we did discuss it, because I think there was a question about the potatoes, wasn't there, Vera?
There might have been.
Because I was like, wait, I didn't think there were potatoes in this part of Ireland at this time. I thought that came later, and wasn't that? Maybe I'm not remembering right, but
I know I don't remember exactly about potatoes, but I know I think it was it was about the wheaten rolls.
that's
Or-
right. That's
yeah,
right. I think so.
On food, because food is like
Right.
it's not relatable.
Right. And so we're like, okay, was this really a thing here? Or how did they get the ingredients? Were these ingredients available? That kind of thing. Yeah. So, but I mean, I think that's interesting too, because then I always learn things and I'm like, oh, perfect. you know?
yeah.
So, I mean, I think you just do have to ask the question if you need to, but I always try to look first, because I don't want to bother the author with those little things if I don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can
Yeah,
find
that
it.
makes sense. Yeah. Okay, Vera, do you have a couple more questions for Jodi?
If you could read the English language of one word, what would it be?
You know, I actually think that all words serve a purpose. I do. So I don't think I would take any words away, because I mean, every word, even the words that we don't like, or even words that are profanity, or even words that are, seem silly, or, I mean, they all serve a purpose. So I think they're all needed. I think it's more, if you could use them the right way in the right situation all the time, then you would feel like you don't need to take the words away.
I think Cassie has an
Sorry.
answer for us on that one.
I agree with Jodi. As long as the author is crafting their words on purpose, not just throwing things in there for the sake of throwing in the kitchen sink. I think that's good. For an editor, sometimes we don't know that an author is deliberately crafting something. So we question it, and then the hope is that the author will say, no, I really did this on purpose, and here's why. Because I know when I was a writer, everything I put in there was very deliberate. Once I got skilled in writing and understood how the whole thing worked, then I understood that what I put on the page had to be very specific. So if you're doing that, then I think you're good, even if you're going a little long or going a little wordy. I think it's just really deliberate attention. Vera, are you a pantser or a plotter?
Oh gosh,
Or do you do both?
Nah, I'm just a complete pantser. I don't know how people write with an outline. I have tried, and it's just not something I can do, because the characters, I mean, they're real people, for me at least. They're not just two-dimensional, carbon copies of something. They're real, and they have their own minds. So I can't really control them fully. So I can't write an outline and tell them to do something that they don't want to do. And I've learned to listen to them, because they're always right.
I think that that's exactly the way I used to write. Is I was definitely a pantser, but when I went back and edit, that's when you're a little more deliberate.
Yes, exactly. That's a great.
And Jodi, am I hitting what you were kind of saying?
Yeah.
And poor Jodi's voice sounds, what's up?
I lost my voice about a month ago. I just have really bad allergies, and we had like a 7-year winter here. So spring is really late. And it's taken forever. And I lost my voice with my allergies like a month ago, and it's just not all the way back.
Oh, wow.
So I am also a pantser. I write the same way. The only thing I have to know when I start writing is, how does this story start? Like, I'll see that opening scene and I see the ending. Everything else, I have no idea how they get from one place to another. I just go.
Yeah, you add in all the that's what I did the first 2 books. You just add in all the important, like the beats, you find them later, and then how to rework it so they fit in nicely.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never had to do any significant rewrites though. So I think there's like a natural instinct that you get when you write that way, that you're just like working towards the next big thing, I guess.
And some have that. Yeah, some definitely have that. And then there's some that really don't, where you could tell they haven't found their rhythm yet.
Right, because there is kind of a rhythm to a story. And don't you think, Vera, when you write, how is that for you? Do you just kind of have that natural rhythm, or do you have to spend a lot of time revising and editing?
Yeah, I mean, it is very natural. And sometimes, I'll have an idea, like, for example, I had in my book a situation. I'll talk about it very briefly, but yes, Sienna, I guess I can talk about it now because it's been talked about so much in the reviews. It's kind of like a spoiler, but oh my gosh, everyone talks about it. So yes, she does unfortunately fall into a coma. And when she wakes up, I've also done a lot of research about that. A lot of times you see in the movies people waking up from the coma and they're like, okay, let's go home. Woohoo. Truth is, no, you can't go home if you've been in the coma for 6 months, because first of all, you can't walk. Like, you need occupational therapy, you need physical therapy, you need speech therapy, you need all kinds of therapy. Your body has been, immobile for a period of time. So there's all kinds of issues. So when Sienna wakes up from her coma, the recommendation, the immediate recommendation, because she can't get up, for her is to go into rehab. And I wanted her to go into rehab because that makes sense, but she didn't want to go to rehab. And it was amazing. Like, we were her and I were fighting. I mean, I did so many rewrites. I'm like, you're going to rehab, honey. You're going. You can't walk. Like, no. I'm not going to rehab. I don't want to go to rehab.
You're going.
It was unbelievable. So I was like, you know what? Fine. Don't go to rehab. I can't do this anymore. So yeah, that's it. She didn't go to rehab. She just went home, and she was driven to rehab by everyone who loves her instead.
Don't you find when you try to force a character to do something that's out of character for them, that's what happens, is it doesn't work, it doesn't flow. Yeah. Your story, it kind of stalls. You don't progress past that because you flipped your character and they're doing something that they wouldn't do.
That's out of character for them.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I've learned that. Yeah, for sure.
We're going to end up going long, but I did promise people we were going to talk a little bit about marketing, because Vera is amazing at marketing. You landed a BookBub ad. Like, there's serious jelly happening all over. Congratulations, by the way. I do mean that sincerely. tell us a little bit about that, because that is something where I actually took a class on how to do BookBub. So you want to share a little bit with us about your marketing?
So not to get too deep into it. So regarding BookBub, so obviously I knew about BookBub. I know that's a big deal because, and I don't know if everyone knows this, but it's not just advertising, it's editorial, because their editors actually choose your book and then they do a write-up on it. It's kind of a big deal. It's a lot bigger than just discounting a book and, making it available. It's something that BookBub, kind of throws their weight behind and says, hey, this is an amazing book. We think you should read it. So what I did is I just kind of, submitted it without any expectation. I completely did not expect anything. And then a week later, they just got back to me and said, you're in. And so I honestly don't know how it happened. So I don't know. But I'm thrilled. And so it starts on June 4th. And then it ends on June 10th. So it goes for a week. The book is going to be discounted. It's going to be only 99 cents, which is like so affordable, right? So it's, this is kind of the time, pick up the copy and give it a go. And it's going to be available internationally. So in the United States, Canada, UK, and Australia. And then on Amazon, Apple Books, Kobo, and Barnes & Noble.
That's
so yeah,
fantastic.
it's super exciting. Yeah.
And it's ready everywhere for the discount, with the exception of Amazon, who doesn't allow us to do sales. They don't actually give us the sale. You have to go in and tell them to drop it. Every other vendor says you can do sales, but Amazon, you have to go in. But I'm ready, Vera. I got you back on this.
Thank you so much,
All
Kathy.
right.
Yeah, it's just such a big deal for me. I'm super excited.
Congratulations. Yeah. So if you are watching us on Facebook and it's still, June, make sure you get that deal right now, because Vera's book is amazing and you do need to see it. Your commercial on your website too is fantastic. Who did that?
I did that. Well, the voiceover is by a professional voice actor. But so in my past life, just kidding, in my actual life, I was a commercial artist, which is basically a big umbrella term for graphic artist and packaging artist and all those things. I actually did packaging, graphic design for Gap when I lived in San Francisco, Gap Inc. for all three brands, Gap, Banana Republic, and Old Navy.
Yeah.
And then I went off on my own and did a lot of really fun stuff with private label and even companies like Disney and Missoni. I designed the Missoni label, Missoni candle. I've done a lot of cool stuff. But so I'm very well versed in graphic design. It's just something that I used to live and breathe and still do. It's just kind of in my blood now. So luckily for me, I can do all kinds of graphic design. So I can do video and everything. So I did that myself.
That's great. Yeah, every time like I see you on Instagram or whatever, you've got amazing images, your commercials, everything is just gorgeous. It looks so sharp. It's very professional, because obviously it was done by a professional. It's great. And you did your own cover too.
Well, with Savannah's help. She helped me so much. Honestly, no, because it's interesting. Graphic design, right? It's not just one thing. It's kind of like writing in different genres. But I've never designed a book cover until I designed my book covers. So I've actually designed about 30 covers total until we've arrived at the one we have now. It's just something very different than, for example, designing a label for a perfume bottle. So for a perfume bottle, it usually has so many notes, right? The perfume does. So let's say it has, I don't know, orange blossom, lavender, mint, something else. I don't know what. So the top note is the one you focus on. So in the design, you're going to focus on the logo, the name of the perfume, the logo of the brand, the name of the perfume, and then the top notes. Maybe you'll have, like, let's say lavender is the top note. So you're going to have, the image of a lavender plant or whatever. and that's about it. So you make it aesthetically pleasing, and it's commercial art. It's done for commerce. It's something that, you know, want people to buy the product. But the book cover, it's also commercial art, but it's also just real art. And it kind of has to encompass, it's distilling your entire, you know, however many page novel to that one image that it's kind of like the top note, and yet it's so much more, because it has to speak to the reader for them to understand what the book is kind of about. But it also has to reflect what your novel is about without, you know, throwing everything in the kitchen sink into it. And that was really, really hard for me. I just, not the kitchen sink part, but just to, I'm used to distilling things in commercial art, but I just didn't know how to do it properly. So the type treatment, the fonts, Savannah helped me so much with that. I'm not used to doing that sort of type treatment. And that's something that, yeah, I'm so grateful to you. It just, I think it looks so pretty. Thanks to you. Yeah.
It is. It's a beautiful cover. You guys did a
Yes.
great job.
Yep.
If Vera, if for our audience who maybe is new and needs to start marketing and doesn't know where to start, do you have a piece of advice for new authors?
So so marketing and PR are they kind of go hand in hand, and I think there's a line, kind of a blurry line between them. So what I did even before, you know, anything was published or anything like that, I actually reached out to a lot of bloggers who read books similar to mine. And I asked for a blurb. I reached to a lot, like almost 100. And I got some, I did a lot of work. And I got Fiona, no, sorry, my dog's barking now. Here we go. Baby, no. Anyway, so I've done that. And then another thing, and then I got some blurbs out of that. And then I also, it was really important for me to get an endorsement from an author that I, you know, or authors that I admire. So I reached out to a lot of different authors as well and asked for an endorsement. And I actually got an endorsement from Julie McCullough, who is a beautiful endorsement. And she's such a wonderful person. And she's a national award-winning journalist, and also the author of the Kendra Donovan series, which are time travel, romantic suspense series. A Murder in Time is her kind of most famous book, I think. But so we emailed back and forth, and she just loved my book and wrote so many wonderful things about it and gave me a little blurb that's so meaningful to me. And then I also had the book read by 3 other authors. One of them is super famous. She writes, I don't want to give out her name. She did not give me a blurb. I'll tell you why. But she writes about Ireland, kind of medieval, ancient Ireland also. Incredible author. I just absolutely love her. But the reason that she didn't give me a blurb, I think she liked the book, but she thought that my sex scenes were a little too erotic. Which is interesting because I have a reviewer who said they're PG-13. So it's so subjective. Now that I go back to kind of her writing, it's funny, right? She doesn't write 80 sex scenes at all. So, and I didn't really think about it at the time. To me, it was all like Ireland centric, you know. It's like, oh, we're both right about the same thing, you know. And anyway, so I did not get a blurb from her, which was a bummer. But that was my those were the things that my kind of PR, you know. And I've done some other things as well, but I've also done blog tours and I had a blog blitz where almost 100 bloggers signed up, which was my mind was blown. I was so excited about that, and they all blogged about it and tweeted about it every day. And you can actually see it on my website under the press tab. So I'm always doing some sort of marketing.
That's amazing. Yeah. See, now people see now when we say that Vera's website link is down below, you really do want to check out her website and find her online. That's so great.
I think we're all kind of in awe at your marketing skills.
Oh yeah,
honestly.
no, trust me, notes are being taken and people are like watching and
You should
no,
do a
that's
whole.
good because
You should do just a whole segment on marketing with Vera for us.
That's fun.
that
Like
would
seriously, that's kind of the standard where everybody wants to be, but doesn't know how to get there.
be, yeah.
Well, I majored in marketing, so I don't know if that I mean, I never worked.
I'm
in
sure
it.
that was helpful.
Might helps a little.
A little bit, maybe. I don't know.
All right, so because we are over, I'm going to jump to Cassie for one last question, if that's okay, because we've never had Cassie on before. So my question for Cassie is, because we have a lot of authors who are in our audience, what is one thing that as a publisher really draws your attention to an author such that you might want to sign them on?
For me, it's always been about the story. The writing is key, meaning that you can tell that somebody can craft sentences and different things like that. But I'm looking for the story to grab me by the throat, no matter what genre it is, no matter what it is. If I can keep reading, if I'm reading something and I can keep reading and I want to keep reading, then yeah, that story has me. That's how I get it. I've said this, and the tagline of CBG is fiction at its finest, and that's what I want to bring the readers. So when I acquire a book, it's because I feel like that's what I'm bringing them. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
mhm.
Vera, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. Jodi, it's always a pleasure. We never get to talk enough as far as I'm concerned. We are so happy to have you. To our audience, Sev, I never thank you. So thank you, because this wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you to Cassie. Everybody, please, as we said, we'll put our links in the comment section below. If you have any questions for Vera, because it sounds like she's got some good marketing tips for you. Any questions for Jodi, for Cassie, for me, Sev, put them in the comments below. We'll make sure that they get to them. Check out our link. Please don't forget to check out Vera's book. Like this video, subscribe or follow depending on where you're watching. Everybody have a great day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.